Quilty friends, today's video is a 101 on English paper piecing. Now it is part of my summer sew along and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on in the video. Plus you can check out the link down below. Now I absolutely adore English paper piecing because it's portable. You can do it anywhere you want. It's hand sewing, it slows you down, it's relaxing, and it's a really chill way of just enjoying the process and making something beautiful at the same time. Let me show you all about English paper piecing. So English paper piecing is when we take paper templates, get fabric, we wrap it around the template, baste it, and then we sew those shapes together. Now you can use all kinds of different shapes. There are some amazing English paper piece quilts out there, but today I'm just going to show you how to do paper piecing with hexagons, which is a very traditional shape to use. And then we're going to sew those together to make a grandmother's flower garden, or at least I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm going to show you how to make our templates using a hexagon shape. Now they come in all different sizes. This is a 1.5 inch size, and if I just grab my ruler, we can work out what size our hexagon is by measuring one side of the hexagon. And if I pop this ruler right on that top edge there, it's measuring 1.5 inches. So this is a 1.5 inch hexagon, and that's the size I'm recommending for my sew along. Now we've got a few different ways we can cut our fabric to wrap around this template. We could measure strips and then from the strips cut them, or what I usually do is just take my fabric. I'm obsessed with this fabric right now, it's one of my favorites, and then I just pop it on top. Now we want at least a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all the sides, remembering don't get that selvage in. We don't want selvages in our quilt. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and cut it by eye, and this is what I've done for years. But like I said, you could cut strips. You should just do whatever you're most comfortable with. Then I'm just going to cut the other two sides, remembering we want about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If anything, you want more and not less than that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my fabric right sides down, and if you'd like to, you can take some glue. Now I'm going to be using a sew line glue pen. This is a new thing to me. Back in the day, like 25 years ago, I used to baste with thread, and I actually have a video showing you how to do that. But we have moved on, and we've moved on to these glue pens, which are amazing. It will save you so much time. Literally, it takes about 3 times longer, probably even more, to thread base. So I really am going to recommend you do invest in some glue because it just saves you so much time. So what I'm going to do is just wind it down. I'm just going to put a tiny dot on the wrong side of my hexagon there. Then I'm going to put my hexagon shape right on top. I probably should have done that dot on the side because I just realized I've got a hole in my hexagon. That wasn't very clever. And then I'm just going to put it right in the center. So I've got about the same seam allowance on all 4 sides. And then I'm just going to push it down so it's secure. Then what we're going to do is take our glue pen and draw a line to then fold our fabric over onto. Now it's really important to not draw your line right on this edge here, because if we do, once we're sewing our pieces together, you're going to find yourself needing to get your needle and put it through that glue constantly, and it puts a lot of strain on yourself. It's just way harder. So what we're going to do is make sure we don't put any glue right on this edge to make our lives easier. So I'm just going to get my glue pen, draw a line right across, and then I'm going to bring up this fabric and fold it over. Now we want it folded over so we're getting a nice straight line, but we're not like really pushing it up and over and making it really firm, because again it's just going to be too hard to get that needle in. So just nicely, we want to just fold it over, get that nice straight line. Then I'm just going to turn it on this rotating mat. Now this is not a necessity, it's just a nice to have, and a lot of people do have them because they can use them when they're sitting on the sofa. I call it a sofa, you might call it a lounge suite. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused with my words. I call it a sofa, you might call it a lounge, a couch maybe. But some people do really like these because they can use them on the couch. It's definitely a nice to have, but not a must have. So if you don't have this, you just have it in front of you and turn. I feel like I'm going on a bit, I'm sorry. Then I'm just going to draw right on this edge here, well, not right on the edge, next to the edge, I'm going to start on the fabric and go right across to the end of my paper. We do want to get a little bit of glue on the fabric right here because we do want to be gluing this edge down. So once again, I'm going to be bringing this up. I want to make sure I bring this side up really nicely and fold it over and push it down. So now I can see I've got a really nice sharp corner and this edge is glued down nicely. So then I'm just going to turn it to the next side and repeat this process. Drawing my glue, not right on that edge, making sure it is on that fabric, so we're gluing down the fabric, folding it up and over and gluing that down. Turning, and we're doing this on all the sides. I might be a little bit shy there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you're thinking, gee, that is a bit shy, you might want to fix it up because once it gets washed and so on, you don't want it falling apart once it's a quilt. Drawing another line. Remembering not too forceful, we want to be able to get stitches in there. And now I'm on this last side, I'm going to make sure I've got a little bit of glue on both sides of the fabric and on my template, folding in those edges. And there we go. There we have it. We've done our first hexagon. Isn't that easy? Now, if I just flip this over, you can see we've got a really beautiful hexagon shape. I've got really nice sharp corners here. I've got nice smooth edges, and that is perfect. So what we need to do is make a whole heap of these and then we sew them together. So let me show you how that works. Before we carry on, I just wanted to show you this really neat little template, which is another way of cutting our fabric. Now, it's really useful if you want to fussy cut. Fussy cut means that you want to use a particular part of your fabric within the shape. So let's say we might want this little orange here right in the middle of our hexagon. What we would do is put this acrylic hexagon. Now, it's perfectly 1.5 inches, just like our template, but it's already added on that 1/4 inch seam allowance for us. So all I do is place that right in the center, and I can see dotted lines where my actual hexagon template would be, but remembering I've got that seam allowance there, all I do is work out exactly where I want my little orange to be sitting, make sure I'm happy, and then I just cut around the edges. Oh, I think it might be time for a blade change. Would have been good to do that before I recorded. So I'm just going along all the sides. I'm making it look much harder than it really is. Wouldn't you know it? Okay, so there we have our shape. So now all we would do is place that wrong sides down again, place our hexagon on top and fold it over, and we've got our perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I think that's really handy, and you can also use this template to cut out lots at one time. I mean, I say lots, but I'd probably only do 3 or 4 layers at a time, but you could get your fabric, fold it over, and then pop that on top, and like I say, cut 3 or 4 layers off at a time. But that's just another really useful little tool, especially if you want a fussy cut. So now you can see I've finished making more hexagon templates, and it's created a grandmother's flower garden, and what we have is 1 hexagon in the center, then it's got another layer around with 6 hexagons, and then another layer around with 12 hexagons. So you can see how effective it is. I absolutely think they're so beautiful, but now we need to sew them together. So I'm just going to move these out of the way, and we're going to just take 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold them right sides together, line up these edges, and then sew along that edge there. Now you can use a clover wonder clip to keep those in place, but I've come across this new invention, which is new to me. They've been around for a few years, that are actually a game changer for this, and they're called Sew Tights. I absolutely love them. I actually met them at H&H Americas. Gosh, the magnets are so strong. And what we do is we just take a sew tight, and it's a magnet, and it just holds them together like that. And it's not bulky like when we used to use the clover clips. They kind of would go flying off, they'd get caught up in the thread. This is just a really nice convenient way of holding them together, and they're really held there together nice and tightly. So now what we're going to do is take our needle and thread, and a recommended size is around between a 9 to 11 needle. Then we're going to take our thread, and it's recommended to use a thread that's the lightest fabric you've got. So if I just take this apart for a minute, you can see I've got the pink and the brown. Well, I don't have a brown, but I'm going to guess that that's probably the best match. You're better off to go with a lighter thread than a darker thread. Then I'm just going to pop my sew tights back on, hold that in place, make sure my edges are all lined up nicely, and I'm just going to sew along one side. So I'm using Wonderful Invisible thread, which is a tongue twister, but I got it right that time. Now it's a polyester thread, and it's really fine and it's really strong. I had a lot of trouble using a cotton thread. I found that once it was going through the layers of the template constantly, the thread would actually snap and break in half. So I then moved on to this polyester thread that's very fine, so your stitches don't stand out too much, and I really love it. So I'm actually going to leave it on the spool. We're going to do a tulip pink trick. We're going to leave it on the spool, and then we're going to thread our needle. And I actually got that, and I don't have my glasses on. Isn't that cool? And then we're just going to cut it. They recommend sort of no longer than your hand to elbow length, because I'm sorry, I'm just grabbing some scissors, because if it's too long it will still get threadbare and you're just damaging that thread. Now we're not going to tie a knot at the end. We're going to do a much simpler way, thank you to Tulip Pink. So I'm going to start on the very edge here, and I'm going to pop my needle through. Probably should go get my glasses at this point though. And we're just going right through the edge there, just a few threads. We're not taking big huge bites out. We're going to pop that through. Whoop. Now you could use a thimble if you want to. Some people do like to use thimbles. And then we're just going to leave the end of the thread there. I'm going to leave about 1 inch of a tail through. I'm not pulling it all the way through. Then I'm going to bring it back over, and I'm going to come back through again, quite close to where I was. Really wishing I put my glasses on. And then we've got a loop. Now what I'm going to do is take my needle and go through the loop once, twice. I'm holding on to that end, and I'm going to pull it tight, and then we've got our knot. Now that is so much easier than the way I used to do it. Trust me, that just saves you so much time and heartache, and it means you don't mind stopping and starting so much, because that little knot is way easier and quicker than any other way I've ever done it. So thank you, Tulip Pink. Now what we're going to do is just carry on going through and just taking small bites out. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. And we want to go straight across, like straight ahead. We don't want to be doing it on an angle. We want to pull it quite firmly, because if we don't pull it firmly, when we open it up, you'll see the stitches and it won't be nice and taut. So we're going straight through rather than on an angle. And you want to do them relatively close together. I mean, not too close together that you'll never make it to the end, but remembering this is what's holding it all together. Now you can see my tail there. I'm actually going to keep going so that my tail gets tucked into my stitches and gets hidden. So it's going to take a minute, but we're just going to go all the way across. So now I'm at the very end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it through and get that loop again, and then I'm just going to go through the loop 1, 2, and pull it tight. So whenever we're at the beginning or the end, we're always going to do a knot so that our joins are really nice and secure and tight. And then what we can do is open this up and take a look, and that looks really cute. Now if you'd prefer to see your stitches, you could use a thicker thread. But now what we need to do is sew on another hexagon. So we would just take our next piece, work out where our thread is, so we wouldn't sew it on here. We would sew it on here. Then I would just pop my needle down, line up those edges so they're nice and straight right there. You could use wonder clips or your sew tights to clip that in place. And then what I'm going to do is carry on along this side. Then when I've done that side, what I can do is I can take my thread, because that will mean I'm all the way over here. I can then run my thread back through underneath where I folded over here, and then we can sew down this edge. So I'll just do that in fast mode so you can see what that will look like. So just remembering right on that join there, right in that corner, let's do a loop and go through it twice. And pull, making sure it's nice and secure. So I'm right back on the end there. I'm just going to pull through, get my loop and go through 1, 2 and pull. So we're nice and secure. Now if I wanted to, I could carry on and sew all my petals on and then go up and down. It's really a personal preference, but at this point, just to show you, I'm going to come through the back here with my needle. Back to that point there. Just going to pop my needle down. I'm going to remove my sew tights and open that up. You can see how cute that's looking. But now what we want to do is fold that in half so these right sides are facing each other. Line up that edge, making sure it's lined up really nicely. And then popping our sew tights on again. And now I'm just going to carry on along this edge. So you can see how it works. We're just slowly sewing all the sides together, and when we need to skip across to another part, we're just coming in the back here and going through the fabric on the side that we glued it down on. So I'll just carry on now, and then I'll have 2 petals sewn to my center of my flower. Remembering whenever we start or finish, we're doing that loop, going through it twice and making that knot. So just removing that sew tight again, and there you can see we're starting to get our flower shape. Isn't that cute? So all I would do now is carry on all the way around with 4 more hexagons, making 6 around the center. Then you'd sew 12 around the center there. Now I just wanted to show you a couple more things that can make your life a little bit easier when you're paper piecing. Both of them are new items to me, and this one is also again from Sew Tights. They're really making some neat things for people like you and me. I actually got this free when I went to H&H Americas, which is a show, but it's a pin holder and a snips holder. So I'm going to take this with me on the plane when I travel on vacation this year. It just goes there, and then my pin's still attached. You can see that just clips on there, but it's also strong enough to hold snips, and I just think that's really neat. And I don't know if you can imagine, but imagine losing a needle on an airplane. It's not something I want to do. So I do plan on taking that with me, and I just think it would be really handy even when I'm sitting in front of the TV, because I do tend to lose them and spend a lot of time looking for them. So I think that's going to save me some time. So I'm pretty thrilled to have one of these to try out this time. And there is one other thing, and that's these Sew Tights flat back stitching palettes. Now let's open them up and take a look. Because I did meet Sew Tights at H&H Americas, I did contact them and tell them I was doing this sew along in this video, so they did send me these to try out. But basically what you do is you take your templates and you line them up. You'll need 2 of your Sew Tights. Just line that one up just like we would before, making a nice straight line, all the corners lined up nicely. Actually, it's just easier to put the Sew Tights on and then arrange it. I have to admit, I'm just opening it up now to show you. And then we sew it on from here. Now you just do exactly the same thing. I feel like you would sew it on from the back. I feel like I need to check that. Yes, it looks like we're sewing it on from the back. Sorry guys. So we would, because if we sewed it on there, then the stitches would be very obvious. So just turning that over, getting it in place, that makes a lot more sense. So then just getting it to exactly how you want it, and then you would just stitch it together like that. Now some people find this way of doing it much easier than having them sandwiched together and stitching through. I just think it's a personal preference, but I did want to show you these because Sew Tights assured me that people do find these very helpful as well. So the beautiful thing about English paper piecing is that it is portable. So like I said, I plan on taking this project with me on vacation. You can do it in front of the television. It's not something that you have to go away to your sewing room or to your sewing machine and do. And that's why I love it so much. It's something that you can just slowly chip away at. And this summer, I'm doing a 10-week sew along. Each week we'll be making 2 grandmother's flower gardens, and then by the end of the 10 weeks we'll have 20, which will be enough to then sew onto a backing to make a beautiful grandmother's flower garden quilt. And would be thrilled to bits if you want to join us. I'll put all the information down below where you can sign up so I can send you emails. I will talk about it in my regular newsletter, but I don't want to overwhelm people that aren't interested in joining us, so we will have our own special email over the 10 weeks. It's going to be so much fun. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you would like to join us, please do leave a comment and let us know. We're all very excited and we're looking forward to doing a really fun, nice small project over summer together.